This happened last summer, in mid-July. My name's Eric. I'm 26, and up until that weekend, I had never gone camping by myself. I'd always talked about it, but the idea of being alone in nature kind of intimidated me. Still, something about that time in my life made me want to get away. No noise, no screens, no people. Just quiet. I needed quiet. I chose a spot about 3 hours north of Denver near Roosevelt National Forest. It was a stretch of backcountry that allowed dispersed camping. And from the research I did online, it was far enough from the more popular trails that it wouldn't be crowded, but not so remote that I'd be completely isolated. That balance felt important for a first-timer. I drove up on a Friday morning and got to the trailhead just after 11. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, light breeze, not too hot. I slung my pack on, locked up the car, and started the hike in. The trail wound up a gentle slope through pine trees and patches of wildflowers. After about 2.5 miles, I reached a spot that seemed just right. A small clearing with soft ground, maybe 150 yards off the trail. I could see 2 other tents farther down the ridge, spaced out enough that I didn't feel intruded upon. I spent the next hour getting everything set up. It took a little longer than I expected. My tent poles didn't want to cooperate. But eventually, I had it all sorted. After that, I sat on a rock, ate a protein bar, and just listened. It was so quiet. Not the scary kind of quiet. Not yet. Just peaceful. Wind through the trees, the occasional bird call. Nothing else. Later that afternoon, while I was boiling water for dinner, a guy came walking up the trail toward my site. Mid to late 20s like me. Wearing a faded blue jacket and cargo pants. His hair was pulled back in a loose knot, and he had a kind of easygoing look about him. "Hey," he said. "First time out here?" I nodded. "Is it that obvious?" He laughed. "A little. I've been coming out this way for a couple years. There's some cool stuff around here if you know where to look." His name was Sean, and he seemed friendly enough. Talked about a few camping spots he liked, some trails that weren't on any maps, even a place where someone supposedly saw a bear once, but in a way that didn't feel like he was trying to scare me. Just swapping stories. We chatted for maybe 10 minutes. He didn't linger. Said he had a site a little farther up the hill and was just walking around to stretch his legs. I thought nothing of it. If anything, I felt a little better knowing someone else was nearby. The sun started dropping around 7:30. I was sitting by my little stove again when I heard footsteps on the trail. Sean appeared, hands in his jacket pockets, like he'd just taken a stroll. "You ever see the overlook up here?" he asked. I shook my head. Didn't know there was one. Most people don't. There's a short path that cuts off the side trail, goes past this old burned-out grove. You can see the whole valley from up there. And there's this weird little pond nearby, super still, like glass, kind of a hidden gem. You want to check it out? Won't take more than 20 minutes. I hesitated. The sun was sinking behind the ridge, but it wasn't dark yet, and I didn't have anything to do. Sitting around the campsite alone was already getting old. Something about his tone made it sound like a cool, secret spot, and I didn't want to seem like a total coward. "Sure," I said. "Let me grab my headlamp, just in case." He smiled. "Good call." I tossed the lamp into my hoodie pocket and followed him up the trail, where the light was starting to fade into streaks of deep orange. I figured, worst case, we'd turn back before it got too dark. But after about 10 minutes of walking, the trail started to fade, and the air suddenly felt colder. We kept moving, But something about the path felt wrong. It wasn't really a path anymore, just a narrow vein through underbrush that barely looked walked at all. Twigs cracked under our boots, and the trees were getting tighter together, like they didn't want to let us pass. Sean, who'd been chatty before, suddenly wasn't saying much. I tried to break the silence with a casual, "So how far is it again?" But all he said was, "Close." He didn't turn around, just kept walking. I noticed he kept glancing up at the sky through the canopy, not in the "wow, what a sunset" kind of way. More like checking something, tracking the light as it disappeared. The weird thing was, we should have reached the overlook by now, if it ever existed. We'd been walking nearly 20 minutes, and all we'd passed was fallen branches and a whole lot of nothing. "You sure we're going the right way?" I asked. Sean finally stopped, didn't look back, just stood there for a moment, then said, "Yeah, it's just past that bend." Except there was no bend, just thicker forest and shadow. I stopped too. "Actually," I said slowly, "I think I'm gonna head back. I didn't bring enough light for a hike this long." Sean turned then, real slow. His expression was blank. No annoyance, no smile, just empty. "You don't want to see it?" he asked. "No, it's fine. I think I'd rather not get lost out here." He took a step closer. "You're not lost," he said. "We're almost there." Something about his tone. It wasn't friendly anymore. It was flat. Like I wasn't a person anymore, just a piece in whatever game he was playing. I backed up a step. "Seriously, man, I'm gonna head back. I've got my sight and everything." He took another step. And that's when I ran. I didn't even think about it. I just turned and bolted down the way we came, ducking under branches, boots slipping on dry pine needles. Behind me, I heard him shout something. First my name, then something sharper, angrier. And then I heard him running. The forest that had felt peaceful hours earlier was now a maze of shadows and cracking branches. I couldn't see where I was going, but I didn't stop. I only had one goal: get back to people, get out. Twice I tripped, once hard enough to scrape my hands, but I didn't dare stop. I could hear him getting closer. Then I heard something whip past me and strike a tree with a heavy metallic clang. I didn't turn to see what it was. I just ran harder. Eventually, the trees began to thin. I recognized a rock I passed earlier, then a tree with the weird gash down the side. I'd made it close to the trail, and then I saw a glow. Someone else's campfire, flickering orange in the dark. I sprinted toward it like it was the last light on Earth. There were 3 people sitting around the fire. When they saw me crashing through the trees, wide-eyed and gasping, they stood up fast. One of them, a guy in a red fleece, came over. "What the hell happened to you?" I tried to explain, tripping over my words, pointing behind me, telling them some guy had led me out into the woods, chased me, maybe tried to hurt me. One of the other campers grabbed their phone and called the ranger line. The weirdest part. None of them had seen Sean before. Not that day. Not that week. They said they'd been there since the night before, and no one had a camp set up nearby. One girl swore she saw a guy walking into the woods alone earlier. No backpack, no gear. Just aimlessly walking. We waited with flashlights on, but he never came back. Later, when I went back to my camp with one of the other guys, I noticed something I'd missed before. Just a few feet from my tent, someone had pressed a shape into the dirt. A boot print, one that wasn't mine. I left early the next morning. Haven't been camping alone since, and probably never will. Last October, I took a solo hiking trip through northern Arizona. I had a week off work and needed time away from people, cell service, and traffic. Just dirt trails, my camera, and the quiet kind of solitude you don't really find anymore. I drove an old black SUV, retrofitted with a roof tent and storage in the back. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. After 5 days in the mountains, I was ready to head back home to Flagstaff. I left the trailhead around noon, but not even 2 miles into the drive, I blew a tire on a sharp patch of rock near a wash. It took most of the afternoon to swap it out. By the time I got everything packed and running again, the sun was already setting behind the cliffs. I wasn't about to drive 6 hours at night on a half-busted spare. I figured I'd make it maybe an hour down the road, find somewhere quiet to crash, then finish the trip in the morning. But I pulled up a camping app I'd used before and found a free spot not far off Route 264, a place called Dry Creek Ridge. No reviews, no photos, just coordinates and a little comment that said, primitive, quiet, not much traffic. Perfect, I thought. The turnoff was a barely visible dirt road with a crooked wooden sign, faded and half-rotted. I followed it for about 10 minutes, headlights bouncing through thick brush and pine until it opened up into a narrow clearing surrounded by trees. There was an old fire pit in the center and some broken logs someone had probably used for seats. No signs of other campers. I parked with my headlights facing the road back out, just in case. That's something I always did without thinking. A little habit from reading too many backwoods horror stories. I climbed into the tent on the roof, zipped up, and settled into my sleeping bag. It was around 11:30. I hadn't even finished a podcast before I started drifting off. Then came the lights. Bright beams sliced through the mesh wall of my tent, flooding it like daylight. I froze. Another vehicle was creeping down the path, engine low, tires crackling through gravel. At first, I thought maybe someone else had found the same campsite, but something about it didn't feel right. The van pulled in slow, real slow. Rusty, square-shaped, headlights foggy but glaring. It stopped just short of my SUV, engine still running, facing me directly. But no one got out. No one turned the lights off. It just sat there, humming. I stayed still, listening. After what felt like a full 5 minutes, the headlights blinked off, plunging the woods into a dark so thick it felt like the trees were closing in. I could barely see anything now, just silhouettes shifting near the van. Then, 2 doors creaked open. Someone whispered. I pressed my body flat against the tent floor and peeked through the edge of the mesh. 2 figures stepped out, one tall, wearing a bulky hoodie, the other shorter, maybe limping. Neither said a word. One of them had something long in his hand. At first, I thought it was a flashlight, but then he gripped it like a bat or a crowbar. They weren't carrying camping gear. They weren't setting up chairs. They were just watching my SUV, studying it. And then they started walking toward it. The footsteps were slow, careful, crunching leaves, the occasional snap of a twig. These guys weren't in any rush, and they weren't trying to be loud either. That's what scared me most. They were deliberately quiet. One of them circled around the passenger side of my SUV, fingers dragging across the windows. The other stayed near the back, right under where I was lying. I could hear him breathing, could even feel the faint creak in the roof of the tent. He didn't say a word, just lingered there, like he was listening for movement. I held my breath, heart pounding in my chest so loud I was sure they could hear it. Then, finally, one of them spoke. "Hey, man," a voice slurred. "You in there? Our van broke down. You mind giving us a hand?" I didn't answer. Everything about his tone was wrong. Too casual, too rehearsed. He sounded drunk or high, maybe both. And the way he tapped the back hatch of my SUV with his metal tool made it clear they weren't after car help. "You awake in there?" the other one asked, voice lower, more serious. I stayed quiet. I didn't dare move. A few seconds passed, then I heard the clink of metal on metal. One of them was trying to pry open the tailgate, gently, but with purpose. That cold surge of fear finally tipped into panic. I reached silently for the pocketknife in my sleeping bag. Not that it would have done much if they got the door open. And then, out of nowhere, a gunshot cracked through the trees. Loud, sharp, close. Everything stopped. Neither of the men said a word. They didn't move at first, just stood frozen like animals caught in a trap. Then, without warning, they turned and bolted for the van, slamming the doors. Kicking up dust and gravel as they tore back down the dirt road, tires squealing on the loose earth. I didn't move until the sound of the engine disappeared completely. Still no voices, no footsteps, just the distant hum of wind through the pines. I don't know what fired that shot. I don't know who. There was no flashlight, no movement, no follow-up sound. Whoever it was didn't come out, didn't say a word. But it saved me. I scrambled out of the tent, didn't even bother packing it up. Just threw everything I could into the back, jumped behind the wheel, and peeled out of that clearing like hell was behind me. I didn't stop until I found a well-lit gas station an hour away, parked between two semis and just sat there shaking. A few days later, I searched for anything I could find about Dry Creek Ridge. There wasn't much. No official campsite listing. No park info. Just a couple forum threads from people who had camped there before. Most were pretty normal, but one caught my eye. A post from 3 years ago. No photos, no details, just a single sentence. "If you hear the shot, don't ask where it came from. Just leave. That's your only warning." I'm not sure what pushed me to go alone this time. Maybe it was the stress of my job, or the way the city always seemed to buzz louder in October. I needed silence. I needed air that didn't smell like concrete. So I packed my camera gear, a compact tent, and enough food for 4 days, and drove out to a trail deep in the Allegheny Mountains. This particular trail, Devil's Ridge Loop, wasn't listed on most maps anymore. I'd found it in an old hiking forum post marked with a warning. Barely maintained, extremely remote, no rescue access. That's exactly what drew me in. I figured it would be the perfect place to photograph the fall colors without bumping into crowds of weekend hikers. By the end of the second day, I hadn't seen another soul. No voices, no distant barking dogs, no airplanes overhead. Just the crackle of leaves under my boots and the occasional flutter of birds overhead. It should have felt peaceful. But there's a certain kind of silence that makes your skin buzz. Like the forest is listening. That afternoon, around mile 12, I saw someone. He was coming down the trail toward me, maybe 100 feet out. At first, I felt a weird burst of relief. Just seeing another human face after so long, it made me realize how tense I'd been. But the closer he got, the less relieved I felt. He was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. Short, messy hair. His clothes were wrong, just a thin gray sweatshirt and mud-caked cargo pants. No backpack, no water, not even a jacket, and the temperature was barely 50 degrees. I nodded as we passed each other, trying to seem casual. He didn't say a word, didn't even look directly at me, just glanced sideways and kept walking. I took a few more steps before turning to watch him disappear around the bend. That feeling was back, skin buzzing. Something wasn't right. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he had a camp nearby. Maybe he was just out for a short walk. Maybe he was one of those minimalist survival guys who lives off-grid. I shook it off and kept going. The trail dipped into a hollow between two ridges, thick with pine and maple trees. My map showed a backcountry campsite just ahead. When I got there, I was disappointed. No view, no clearing, just a patch of flat dirt smothered by tall trees. It felt buried. The sky had started to darken, so I quickly set up my tent and got my stove going for dinner. A can of soup hissed and bubbled as the wind stirred the leaves. I tried to focus on the quiet, on the fire-colored treetops, on the photographs I would take in the morning. That's when I heard it. Soft crunching, just beyond the circle of trees behind me. I froze, listening hard. It stopped. Probably a raccoon or a deer. I told myself that 3 times before forcing myself to stop staring at the woods. As the sun dipped below the trees, I stood up to stretch and saw him. The man from earlier. He was just standing there at the edge of the clearing, maybe 20 feet away. No sound. No warning. He hadn't made a single noise coming up the trail. And now, he was back. But that wasn't what chilled me. He had been walking away from this place when I passed him. That trail only loops in one direction. The only way he could be here now was if he turned around right after passing me and followed. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. I just watched as he slowly stepped closer. Then sat down on a patch of dirt near a tree, not even facing me. Still no backpack, no sleeping bag, no fire. Just him, alone, sitting cross-legged, staring into the woods like he belonged there, like he'd always been there. And in that moment, with darkness creeping in and only a thin tent between me and the forest, I realized something terrifying. I was not alone, and I wasn't supposed to be here. I kept pretending not to notice him. I didn't want to provoke anything, whatever this was. But every few seconds, I'd sneak a glance. He hadn't moved. Just, is there? No reaction. No acknowledgement of me at all. It was like I wasn't even real to him. The light drained fast. Soon, only the faintest, dusky glow clung to the sky. I lit my headlamp and faced my tent, back turned to him, heart racing. My body wanted to run, but my brain was stuck in a loop of, what the hell do I do now? I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't staying here. I kept my movements slow and quiet, trying to pack up as silently as I could. My fingers fumbled on the tent poles. Every crunch of nylon felt deafening. I wasn't sure if he was watching me. I couldn't bring myself to look. Then I heard it. Movement. Behind me. Leaves shifting. A twig snapping. I turned. He was standing now, facing me. I froze, heart hammering in my chest. We stared at each other across the hollow. His expression didn't change. Not angry, not curious. Just blank. I didn't speak. I just shoved the last of my gear into my pack, clipped it shut, and slipped my knife into my pocket. It was a small one, barely enough to open a box, let alone defend myself. But it made me feel like I had something. I started walking. Not running, just a steady pace, headlamp beam bouncing with each step. I didn't hear him at first, but maybe a minute in, I picked up a second rhythm behind me. Faint, padded steps on the trail, getting closer. I sped up. So did he. My breath caught. I didn't look back, didn't want to confirm it, but I knew. He was following. After maybe 5 minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. I spun around. He was still there, maybe 30 feet back, standing in the middle of the trail, just watching. That's when I veered off into the trees. It was reckless. Dumb. I knew it. But something told me if I stayed on that trail, I wouldn't make it out. The woods swallowed me. My headlamp barely cut through the tangle of branches. I pushed through low limbs and over roots, picking a jagged path downhill until I spotted a fallen tree wide enough to crawl behind. I dropped to the ground, heart pounding so loud I thought it might give me away. And then, silence. It was almost worse than hearing him. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe more. Then I heard leaves shifting again. Footsteps. Close. They stopped just a few yards away from my hiding spot. I could see his silhouette now. He wasn't on the trail anymore. He was in the woods, looking for me. He started calling out. "Hey," he said, his voice too cheerful. "You okay out here?" I didn't move, didn't breathe. "Don't be scared. Just want to talk." The way he said it was all wrong. Too upbeat. Forced, like he was trying to mimic friendliness, but didn't understand how it was supposed to sound. He kept going. "You left your camp in a hurry. Need help with anything?" I stayed frozen, fingers wrapped around the handle of my knife. Finally, he stopped talking. Then, nothing. No more footsteps. No sound of retreat. Just the woods settling back into stillness. I waited. A long time. Eventually I crawled out, staying low. I moved fast, heading downhill, cutting across dry creek beds and ducking through branches. My legs burned. I didn't stop. I didn't care where I was going, just that it was away. At some point, I hit an old service road and followed it for miles. I didn't reach civilization until after dawn. A ranger station, locked but with an emergency phone. I called. Someone came. I told them everything. They took notes, nodded, promised to look into it. But they didn't seem surprised, didn't ask many questions. No one ever followed up. Weeks later, I searched around online. Buried deep in a survivalist forum, I found a thread. Strange man near Hollow Ridge Camp, Allegheny. A post from 2018. Nearly identical description. No gear. Doesn't speak. Follows.
If these stories sent a chill down your spine, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe for more eerie tales. What would you do if you were caught in one of these unsettling situations? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear what's on your mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.